It began, as these things often do, with a whisper, a rumour carried on the wind, from a place far beyond my usual haunts, a place steeped in shadow, veiled in mist, where ancient stories clung to the mountainsides like ghosts. Japan. I was a writer then, you see, a collector of tales, stories of the strange, the unusual, the unsettling. This one found me. It seeped into my consciousness, a chilling murmur from a land I'd only ever dreamt of. The assignment was simple enough. Delve into the folklore of a remote village nestled deep in the Japanese Alps, a place forgotten by time where the old ways lingered and whispers of the supernatural danced around flickering oil lamps. They called it a suicide spot, this village, a place where the veil between this world and the next was thin, where the restless dead roamed freely. I scoffed at the time, of course, a writer's cynicism, I told myself. Still, the seed was planted. The whispers had taken root. After a grueling journey, I found myself standing at the edge of the village, dwarfed by the towering mountains that loomed over it like watchful guardians. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to muffle even my own footsteps. I made my way to the village's only inn, a rickety wooden structure that leaned precariously against the mountainside. The innkeeper, a woman with eyes as old as the mountains themselves, greeted me with a curt nod. Her silence, I would soon learn, was not unfriendly, but born of a deep respect for the secrets the mountains held. It was in the inn's dimly lit tea-house, my senses calmed by the fragrant steam of green tea, that I first heard whispers of the tunnel. A group of villagers, huddled around a low table, fell silent as I entered. Their eyes, dark and fathomless, followed my every move. I attempted a smile, a gesture of goodwill. It was met with blank stares. Undeterred, I inquired about the village's reputation, about the stories that clung to it like the mist that shrouded the mountain-tops. A low murmur rippled through the group, followed by a chilling silence. Finally, one of the villagers, his face etched with worry lines, spoke. "The tunnel," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It swallows people, it takes them and never gives them back." The old man's words hung in the air, heavy and cold, like the mountain mist that seeped through the cracks in the tea-house walls. I could feel a prickle of unease crawl up my spine, despite my attempts to rationalize his words. Superstition, I told myself, folklore, nothing more. Yet the villagers' haunted expressions spoke of a deeper truth, a terror that ran far deeper than mere stories. I pressed further, my curiosity piqued, my writer's instinct to unearth the truth now fully ignited. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, their silence more telling than any confession. The old man, however, seemed to sense my genuine interest, perhaps even a flicker of empathy in my gaze. With a heavy sigh, he beckoned me closer. "The elders," he rasped, his voice little more than a dry whisper. "They know the truth. They've seen its hunger." He pointed a gnarled finger towards the mountains, his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight like pools of dark water. "They live at the foot of the pass, where the shadows are deepest." The next morning, guided by a sense of foreboding and a well-worn path, I sought out the village elders. Their home, a modest dwelling, perched precariously on the edge of a steep ravine, seemed to blend seamlessly into the surrounding forest. It was as if the mountain itself was trying to reclaim it, to shroud it in the same mystery that clung to the tunnel. I was greeted at the entrance by a woman, her face a canvas of time, etched with wisdom and sorrow in equal measure. She spoke no English, but her eyes held a warmth that transcended language. I was ushered inside into a room filled with the scent of incense and the weight of unspoken stories. The elders, 3 in total, sat cross-legged on tatami mats, their faces etched with the passage of time. They listened patiently, their eyes never leaving mine, as I explained my purpose, my desire to understand the legend of the tunnel. When I was finished, the eldest of the three, a man whose beard flowed like a silver waterfall down his chest, began to speak. His voice, though frail, resonated with an ancient power. He spoke of a time long ago when the tunnel was nothing more than a path through the mountain, a lifeline connecting the village to the outside world. Then, he said, the darkness came, slowly at first, like a creeping shadow, then all at once, swallowing everything in its path. He spoke of travellers who ventured into the tunnel, never to be seen again. Of villagers desperate to escape the grip of famine or war, who met with the same chilling fate. Their belongings, he said, would sometimes reappear at the tunnel's mouth, as if discarded by an unseen hand. But the people, they were gone, vanished without a trace. As he spoke, the air grew heavy, the room seeming to shrink around me. The woman who had greeted me earlier placed a calming hand on my arm, her touch surprisingly strong. She whispered words I couldn't understand, but her meaning was clear. Turn back. Some places, some stories are not meant for us to know. I left the elders' home that afternoon, my mind awhirl with fear and fascination. The villagers' warnings, the elders' tales, they all pointed to a darkness that resided within the tunnel, a darkness I felt strangely drawn to. As dusk approached, casting long, eerie shadows across the village, I made my decision. I would see this tunnel for myself. I would face the darkness, and perhaps, just perhaps, I would find the truth that lay hidden within its depths. The path to the tunnel was less a road, more a scar upon the mountainside. Worn smooth, I imagined, by the countless souls who had walked this route before me. Each step forward seemed to carry me further from the familiar, from the comforting rhythm of village life, and deeper into the heart of the unknown. The sun, now a hazy disk sinking towards the horizon, cast long skeletal shadows from the pines that lined the path. Each one seemed to writhe and twist as I passed, like phantoms reaching out from the undergrowth. A strange silence had descended upon the mountain, broken only by the crunch of my own footsteps on the stony path. Gone was the chirping of crickets, the distant calls of birds. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as I drew closer to my destination. It was an unsettling hush, an absence of life that pressed in on me, amplifying the thud of my own heart. I felt a chill creep up my spine, a sensation that had little to do with the cooling air. As twilight deepened, the air thickening with an almost tangible sense of dread, I found myself at the foot of the pass. There, looming before me like a moor in the mountainside, was the tunnel. It was far larger than I had imagined, a gaping void that seemed to swallow the fading light. Its entrance, framed by rough-hewn stone blocks blackened with age, was devoid of any markings, any sign of human touch. It was as if the mountain itself was ashamed of this scar upon its face, eager to conceal it in shadow. The silence here was absolute, heavier than the air itself. It pressed against my eardrums, a suffocating blanket of quiet that seemed to muffle even my thoughts. I paused at the threshold, my hand hovering inches from the cold, damp stone of the tunnel's mouth. A strange reluctance held me back, a primal instinct screaming at me to turn back, to flee this place while I still could. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the chilling silence. A bead of sweat trickled down my temple, cold against my skin. I was afraid, yes, but more than that, I was captivated, drawn in by the very darkness that terrified me, by the unanswered questions that whispered from the tunnel's depths. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the rising tide of fear, and stepped across the threshold. The air inside the tunnel was instantly colder, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else, a musty, metallic tang that I couldn't quite place. The light from the setting sun, already weak, was quickly swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Soon I was enveloped in an impenetrable blackness, the world outside reduced to a shrinking pinprick of fading orange. I fumbled in my pocket for my torch, my fingers clumsy with a sudden irrational fear. As the beam flickered to life, cutting a shaky swathe through the darkness, I became aware of the tunnel walls closing in around me. They were rough to the touch, damp and cold, as if the mountain itself were weeping. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to absorb all sound. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud in the confined space, each one seeming to reverberate off the unseen walls and return to me distorted, unfamiliar. I could feel a prickling sensation on the back of my neck as if I were being watched. I swung the beam of my torch around, but there was nothing there, only the endless oppressive darkness and the growing feeling that I was not alone. Deeper I ventured, the feeble beam of my torch battling against the all-consuming darkness. The air grew colder still, biting at my skin, seeping into my bones. The silence, once oppressive, was now broken by a low, guttural humming that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. It was a sound that spoke of ancient things, of forces beyond human comprehension. My footsteps faltered, my resolve beginning to crumble in the face of this unseen, unknowable presence. I pushed on, driven by a strange compulsion I could neither explain nor resist. The tunnel twisted and turned as if the mountain itself were trying to disorient me, to trap me within its cold embrace. The air grew thick with a strange, cloying mist that clung to my clothes, my skin making it difficult to breathe. I could taste it now, a metallic tang on my tongue like the taste of blood. I paused, my hand trembling as I shone the torch back the way I had come. The light, swallowed by the darkness, revealed nothing but the same endless tunnel, the same oppressive walls. Had I made a wrong turn? Was I even still on the path? A wave of dizziness washed over me, a sudden, overwhelming sense of disorientation. I leaned against the tunnel wall, my hand sinking into something soft and yielding. I recoiled, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a moss, I realized, a strange, phosphorescent moss that clung to the walls in patches, emitting a faint, eerie glow. It was this glow, I now understood, that had given me the impression of movement, of something lurking just beyond the reach of my torchlight. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, to rationalize the fear that threatened to consume me. It was just moss, after all, just a trick of the light. But deep down, a primal instinct whispered a different truth. This tunnel, this place, it was not right. It was a place of shadows and whispers, of unseen eyes and unheard footsteps. A place where reality itself seemed to bend and warp, where time lost all meaning. I had been warned, hadn't I? The villagers, the elders, they had all spoken of the tunnel's hunger, its insatiable appetite for the living. Had I been so arrogant, so blinded by my own curiosity, that I had ignored their warnings? I pushed on, my pace quickening, driven now by a desperate need to escape this place, to feel the sun on my face, the wind in my hair. But the tunnel seemed to stretch on endlessly, the darkness closing in around me like a suffocating blanket. The humming grew louder now, a low, mournful drone that seemed to seep into my very bones. And then I heard it, a sound that cut through the darkness like a knife, sending a chill down my spine. A whisper. It was faint, barely audible above the humming, but unmistakable. A voice, or rather the echo of a voice, whispering my name. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I shone my torch around frantically, but there was nothing there. Just the endless darkness, and the echo of that whisper, now fading into the humming as if it had never been. I stumbled back, my foot catching on something on the tunnel floor. I fell heavily, my torch clattering out of my grasp and plunging me into absolute darkness. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. I scrambled for the torch, my fingers closing around its cold metal casing. As the light flickered back to life, I realized with a sickening lurch that I was no longer alone. Standing before me, shrouded in shadow, was a figure. Tall and gaunt, it seemed to melt out of the darkness itself, its features obscured by the gloom. For a moment, I was paralyzed with fear, my mind struggling to comprehend what my eyes were seeing. Then, as the figure took a step towards me, the shadows shifted, revealing its face. It was a face frozen in a rictus of terror, eyes wide and staring, mouth twisted into a silent scream. It was a face I recognized, a face I had seen before, in the photographs shown to me by the village elders, the face of one of the lost. The figure reached out a hand towards me, its fingers long and skeletal. The skin stretched thin across bone. I recoiled, scrambling back on my hands and knees, a scream rising in my throat. But the figure did not follow. It simply stood there, its eyes locked on mine, its expression a chilling mixture of sorrow and pleading. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone, melting back into the darkness, leaving me alone once more in the suffocating silence of the tunnel. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The image of the figure, its face contorted in silent agony, seared itself onto the back of my eyelids. Panic, raw and primal, flooded my senses, drowning out all rational thought. I had to get out, had to escape this suffocating darkness before it consumed me entirely. I ran blindly, desperately, the beam of my torch dancing wildly across the tunnel walls, illuminating nothing but the same unending darkness. The air grew thick and heavy, the metallic tang almost overpowering now. It clung to the back of my throat, choking me, suffocating me. I could feel the tunnel pressing in around me, the walls closing in, the ceiling lowering. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I stumbled, my hands scraping against the rough stone. I was trapped, I realized, lost in this labyrinth of darkness with no way out, no escape. I sank to my knees, my back against the cold, damp stone, my chest heaving. The humming was deafening now, vibrating through the very core of my being. I could feel it in my teeth, in my bones, a low rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo the beating of my own heart. Or was it the other way around? Was the tunnel breathing? Was it alive? The darkness seemed to writhe and shift around me, taking on strange, amorphous shapes. The whispers returned, louder now, closer, swirling around me like a chorus of the damned. I could hear my name called out again and again, sometimes in pleading tones, sometimes in voices raw with anguish. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands against my ears, trying to shut out the sound, the sight, the very feel of this place. But it was no use. The tunnel had me now, had sunk its claws deep into my soul, and it would not let go. I don't know how long I remained there, huddled on the cold, hard ground, lost in a haze of terror and despair. Time seemed to have lost all meaning, stretched thin and distorted by the darkness that surrounded me. But gradually, as my initial panic began to recede, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't peace, not exactly. It was more like acceptance, a resignation to my fate. The whispers continued, but they no longer seemed threatening. They were stories, I realized, fragments of memories, echoes of lives lived and lost within these unforgiving walls. They spoke of fear, yes, but also of hope, of love, of regret. They were the voices of the forgotten, reaching out from the darkness, seeking solace, seeking connection. And then, just as I felt myself surrendering to the darkness, a glimmer, a faint, ethereal light far ahead in the distance. Hope, like a fragile butterfly, fluttered in my chest. I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaky, my body racked with exhaustion, but that light, that beacon in the blackness, spurred me onward. Each step was an agony, each breath a struggle, but I pushed forward, drawn towards the promise of escape, of salvation. As I drew closer, the light grew stronger, revealing the outline of the tunnel's exit. The humming, the whispers, the oppressive atmosphere, it all seemed to recede. Pushed back by that growing light, I emerged from the tunnel, blinking against the sudden onslaught of daylight like a creature reborn. The world spun around me, the fresh air, the scent of pine, the warmth of the sun on my skin, all so alien, so overwhelming after the stifling darkness of the tunnel. I don't recall how long I stood there, gasping for breath, my limbs trembling, my clothes damp and caked in the tunnel's strange phosphorescent moss. Time, once so distorted, so meaningless within those walls, now seemed to snap back into place, rushing forward to greet me. I had escaped, yes, but I knew deep down that the tunnel had not finished with me. It had marked me, branded me with its darkness, and I would carry its memory with me always. The villagers, when they found me, spoke in hushed tones, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. They had seen it before, they said, the tunnel's touch. Some it swallowed whole, others it spat back out, changed, haunted by what they had seen, by what they had become within its depths. I left the village the next day, my notebooks filled with half-written accounts, with fragments of memories and whispers that refused to be silenced. I never returned, but sometimes, in the dead of night, when the world is quiet and the shadows stretch long and cold, I can still hear the tunnel calling my name, its voice a low, mournful hum that echoes through the darkest corners of my mind. And so, the tunnel remains, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets, swallowing the curious and the unwary in equal measure, a stark reminder that some places, some stories, are best left undisturbed. But the darkness, it seems, has a way of following us home, of whispering in the shadows, of tugging at the edges of our dreams. Perhaps you felt it too. That unsettling chill down your spine, that prickling sensation at the back of your neck, as if you are being watched, followed, when you know you are alone. If you have ever felt the touch of the unknown, if you have ever heard the whispers in the darkness, we want to hear your story. Share your experiences in the comments below. Let your voice join the chorus here in the shadowy corners of Stories from the Dark. New tales of terror await you every week if you dare to listen. Be sure to like, subscribe and turn on notifications before the next story finds you first.